Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer, and today we're going to be walking through the core loop of the Fred's Roadtrip Storyteller app. Um, yeah, so this this the thing I'm going to be walking through today is basically the setup code for the main loop, the error message flow where it collects error messages, billing state flow where the in-app billing is collected and the state is set for the UI and for the app to detect what the billing state is. Also, the Google Map UI elements, setting those up. Um, the functions that set the commands and set the markers, things like that. User location updates, how that's all put together. And the core loops are all mostly in these launched effect blocks. I'm using coroutines inside them as well, inside like the load markers routine. And for each GPS uptake location, if the user travels out of the load radius, it'll trigger a reload for that radius, and then the load radius to then change. And a new set of markers is loaded from the HMDB database via the scraper. And then as the user uh, is traveling along inside the circle of the loaded markers, it will collect the scene markers. So we do a check for that. Right now, I'm dealing with a known intermittent race condition that I really only discovered after the iOS trying to test the iOS side. It happens after about 150 markers. It is intermittent. I haven't got a real good solid case down for it, but that's the last technical hurdle I have to work through. And Yeah, I'm gonna probably do a live stream as I'm doing that, as I'm working through that, just so you can, I don't know, just be interesting to see how I approach these issues. And the state of the speech is also being checked in a loop, and the frame rate performance optimizations to get Google Maps to to behave. Um, okay. All right, so here's the app metadata, whether it's debuggable, whether what the version string is. I try to make the naming very literal, but I'm just gonna go through it anyway. The Android build string number, the iOS build bundled version number. This is for like when you send debug logs, when we're sending debug logs for people. This is all like state of the machine type of thing, and state of the app. When it was installed, this is for tracking the billing state. And I want to say something about that is there's actually no way to check on iOS for sure. I haven't checked this on Android to see if the app has already been installed before. Because right now all we're doing is checking the installation time on Android. On iOS there is no such thing, so it's this time that the app is first launched. And yeah, so people can buy the in-app the pro version. The trial version ends in 3 days. It's how we know that we're doing that. But what features actually get disabled, we haven't decided that yet. But but what the user can do is, like, if they don't mind losing all their data, they can just download they can uninstall the app, install it again, and start collecting markers again. But so we may have to do something. We don't want to use a user account. With a user account, this is obviously easy to check. But without a user account, I think we're just gonna be the penalty is you lose all your markers. I guess that'll be one of the penalties, and maybe you can't collect any more markers, or you can only collect one in a group or something. I don't know. We're still deciding what the limitations are, but that's something that should be known. I didn't really know that going in. Here's the debug log where it gets each anytime we have a debug statement, it just adds it to this list of up to I think I've got like 1,000 events. I was experimenting with it. There is limits to the size of the email you can send. So yeah, and I didn't want to use any backdoor stuff. I didn't want to put that in there. I want to make it, hey, if you're sending us something, it's gonna be on you to do it, to send us as much as we can. make it that way. We want to kind of make this a privacy focused app. That's just kind of part of the design things we wanted to try. There's the name of the app that we used all over the place that gets it out of a config property. Um, max reload radius that gets it out of a config property that's configured for the app, not for the user. So there's user preferences and there's these configuration properties, and you can look at see how that's done. These are all optimizations for dealing with Google Maps, how it operates. Like you have to like set it while it's rendering. It's odd. It's very honestly not composed like at all, and unfortunately, it's what we have to deal with right now. Here's the speech stuff for iOS. This is the unspoken text here, which is just every time a piece of text is spoken, a piece of the chunk of the unspoken text is removed, and then that lets it like do a chunk at a time, because there are limits. On iOS, there seems to be a limit with how much text can be given at a time. This synchronized object. This is a way for me to deal with. I'm working through the race condition on the database. It only allows one write at a time, and then it batches up the writes in RAM, and then does a write to persistent storage after a delay. And this is a synchronized object that only allows one write to happen at a time. I'm hoping this is the way this approach works. I might have to just abandon it and do something else. I'm going to do that on the live stream as I go through and edit these items. So here's the error messages flow. This is coming from the shell. The shells can emit messages like for billing errors or for other types of errors. So this is the flow that's received from the platform specific side and shared inside the app. Here's a serialization setup for any serialization that we're doing, which isn't a lot actually. I mostly use this for debugging, because of the pretty print that's built into the serialization. Using this to output objects, it's just much nicer in the debug log to have everything formatted. There's still parts of the IDE that still outputs like a long string of things. It's just very difficult to read. I'm surprised they still have it that way, but anyway, that's these IDEs do change slowly. So here's the bottom sheet screen details. This just keeps track of which bottom sheet is being held open at the current time. Oops. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Here's the app. And inside here, this is a bunch of where we do a bunch of the setup. So here's a bunch of state for the coroutine for this composable. Here's the bottom sheet scaffold state. This holds the bottom sheet and the scaffold inside the bottom sheet is all kept inside there. Onboarding dialogues, whether they're visible, the about box is visible. Those are all kept here in the state in these state variables here. The error message string is kept here. So this is one of the cases where I'm actually using a nullable, because it just makes it really easy in the code in the composable to check to see if it's nullable by doing an Elvis operator. And if it is not null, it means there's an error message and you display that. So this is a case where we could use one of those, an optional or a result type or an optional type, but I just think this is a good use case for null, because we have the Elvis operator, and it does make sense here. So this is one of my few exceptions where I'm actually using a nullable and for a very specific purpose, and then it just collects the flow here to where it's coming from. It collects the error messages here. Let's see. Here's the billing messages stuff, where we're getting the billing state and any error messages. Is also launched at app launch time. It checks to see if the install has been set yet, and if it hasn't, that sets the install time. This isn't like the most secure security, but anyone that's really gonna go through the trouble of changing this, well, they probably have other ways of getting this app. So I'm not that worried about that. For the 99% of the users who ever download this app, they're never going to go through that much trouble. They'll just pay the fee and not worry about it. So here's the common speech. This one right now, we're just using the speech flow on iOS because we have to communicate through. I had to use some Swift code to communicate. I couldn't get the KMP Kotlin native side to compile, so I used a really which I'm going to go into. When you can't get it to work on one of the platforms, you just go native, go drop into the native platform. And on iOS, you do have access to Swift. And the way you communicate through that is through this common flow. You emit a flow, it receives it on the other side, does its thing. When it's done, it emits a flow back. It works great. And it's like it's a native bridge that's super fast. There's, it's instantaneous on it really. So here's where we're collecting whether you're speaking or not speaking. Right now, it's just doing a log. I eventually will update this when I go for the iOS version. Right now, we're gonna release the Android first, and then eventually follow up with the iOS. It's amazing how much stuff is actually operating perfectly fine. So anyway, that's how that works. Here's the Google Maps UI elements. We got the user location. We have if the tracker, the background tracking is turned on or not. And these are the commands. These are commands. So yeah, I discussed in the other video that Google Maps is just odd. It has a very odd way of doing things. So you have to do this. You have to set it, and then once it the composable sets it, then you have to say I've set it. So it's like a should and did. So here's the command. So should center the camera on location. So I want to set the camera on to the location. So I set this should. The Google Maps will set it, and then keep going, and then it'll won't try and set it anymore. Goofy way of doing it, but whatever, it works. That's just how it's all put together. I'm surprised this was greenlit, honestly, but anyway, that's it's like my ongoing complaints on Google Maps, how they have implementations is very odd, strange idioms. Okay, so here's a little formatting error here. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the UI marker last updated location. So that's as the loaded. Yeah, this is the loaded circle. So as the user drives through outside that 10-mile radius, it'll show that this is what tracks that location where the markers were last updated. And this is the scene radius, which is kept is of course right here inside. Here, this is the scene radius right here. Okay, so here we are. Recently seen markers set. So this is the set of all the markers that have been seen. So the recently seen markers list, this one right here, this list right here, only shows the top 5 the most recent top 5 of this set. So there's a set of all the markers that have ever been seen, and then there's the recently seen markers list, which is just those top 5. Okay, the network loading state. This is for as the networks are being loaded. This icon will change. It'll show a cloud with an arrow coming down when it's actually downloading, and then when the parsing happens, it turns completely white, and when it's done, it disappears. That keeps track of that. It's a very subtle UI element that most people probably won't even pick up on, but it's really great for debugging because you can see when it has multiple pages. You can see when it's downloading, hitting the network, it goes black, when it's parsing, it goes white. And you can see the downloading part takes forever, and the parsing is just blink of an eye. It's just super fast because it does that one pass thing, which is extremely efficient, right? But like hard to debug and kind of hard to write, honestly. And okay, so loading icon, state icon is right here. That it just it maps it from the state of the loading to the actual material icon that I'm using. I'm using material makes this doing these rapid prototype of these apps pretty easy, man. They made it a lot easier. This stuff is definitely getting easier in lots of ways. Here's the load markers. Now this is actually sets up its own little loop in here. Um, in here, it checks for the cached markers. If it doesn't have the cached markers, it will actually go out and try and load those initial markers. And here's what I think we already went through this section here. So that is a looper in here. Here, wait, is it a looper? Yeah, it's a launch effect. Yeah, so it changes. It always so it runs this routine every single time this user location changes. I wish there was a way that they would show that this is actually a reactive parameter and not just a regular old parameter, not just a static parameter. Um, I wish there was a way of like putting it in italics or something, because there's no way to know that this is actually a reactive parameter without going and actually seeing how it's passed in. So I think that just needs to be, I don't know. Needs to be something about that, because it's not obvious just by looking at it. This is a reactive parameter. That's a Anyway, so and you can show the loading state here for debugging purposes. You can see how that works right there and set that up. That's what that there is for. Uh, this sets a command to should to calculate the cluster items. So when objects when there's new markers that are loaded, this gets set, which then causes the Google Maps to recalculate the marker set, the set of markers for the map. Um, so you have to do this thing where it sets the should, and then the next cycle of the frame, Google Maps does its thing, and it inside there does a callback basically. Back to callbacks. That goes and resets this parameter. I mean this variable here in the parent. There may be there's got to be another way of doing this, either like different way for Google Maps to work. I don't know. This seems clunky as hell. As long as I say this seems clunky as hell. Maybe it's just the way things are done. I don't know. There's just anyway. I'm complaining. Hold on. Let me get my thoughts together here. Okay, so I was having a heck of a time with this info marker. So I had to do this special thing where it actually, instead of just ah, where I have to make its own marker, because you have cluster items and the markers, and I had to make its own marker that's invisible that takes the info item. So I don't know if they know that there's a problem with the info markers. It's the info windows that live above the markers. I'm not sure if Google knows about the issue. It doesn't seem to be as bad on the iOS side. Anyway, Google Maps is quirky. It's very quirky. And I'm sure people who've worked with it for years understand all the quirks, but man, it's just really quirky. Anyway, I'll quit complaining. Let's see. So here's the final markers. Now these are the markers that are actually applied to the map. Um, what's this one? Update the markers. Okay, so this, remember here. Okay, so this is listening to the database, the custom repo that I've made, which doesn't use room or anything like that, because it's using it mostly. This thing has to be in RAM, so I wanted to make it very fast and efficient for in RAM use. So this listens to the flow from the results of any changes to that database. And if there is a change, it does a synchronized thing on this final markers, which is a snapshot state list, which I think this is what's causing the race condition. I'm not sure. Anyway, off topic. I'll be fixing that in a future video and do a stream about it because I gotta fix it. It's not clear exactly where it's happening, but I think it might be here. Anyway, so after the update happens, this is when it sets the should cluster items flag to true, which is basically a command that sends that Google Maps the next frame will say, oh, I have to calculate the items, and it'll take these new final markers. I think that's what it is. Yeah, the new final markers, and go, okay, I'm gonna render these now. So I'm gonna have to refactor how this works, more than likely. So here's the marker details state. So when you go over here and you click on this item here, it keeps the state of the loading the item and the parsing and all that stuff. It goes on. It does that live, right? As you ask for it on the fly. Is scene tracking paused? If scene okay, this is for I try to be useful here and leave notes to you and myself. Uh, this is when in the background, compose will just keep running because it doesn't have the same life cycle stuff, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to rely on that life cycle. I want to see if I could get away with like doing it without life cycles. I probably will eventually have to go back and change it out, but right now it just checks to see if you're in the background and after if you render so the way I check to see, it's like I don't check to see if you're in the background, but if you've gone several frames, like I don't know I remember how many, like 3 or 4 frames, um and I haven't moved, I'll stop the background check. I'll stop the is scene tracking because it's this is a separate thing here, right here. So this is processing the is scene um, as the user goes along. As the user goes along with this thing, it's checking to see if any of these markers are inside the is scene inside this radius. That's basically what I'm talking about right here. So it checks to see if it's paused or not paused, and it does it every second or so. And it basically goes and checks to see if there's any markers in that radius and adds it to the is scene list. So that's how that works. Boop, boop. Start tracking. I love inner functions inside Kotlin. They're just really super handy to just do shorthand of actually what's going on. Even when it's just two things like this, it's just you could do 2 lines, but I have to remember which ones go which way, and it's just really nice to have a little function, inline function. I wish I could put them at the bottom. I wish I could put them anywhere in the scope, but they have to be defined in before they're used. Okay, that's the whole thing. So that's why I put them right here, right next to each other. Um, so this is also I actually people hate polling, but it definitely simplifies the logic. And for long polling of stuff, every 150 milliseconds, which is right here, is checking that if it's currently speaking. I think this works great. Honestly, it's super straightforward. There's only one place in the code. It's only happening right here, and everyone's right. It's super quick. It's just like checking a flag, checking a flag, checking a flag. And this is one that keeps the speaking in chunks. And it speaks in chunks here. So I don't know. I'm a fan where it's appropriate for simple solutions like polling, and this isn't going to overwhelm the resources of the machine or anything like that. It's this I think it's appropriate. So maybe you can argue with me in the comment section. Okay, so it's pulling for the next marker. So I'm every second or so I'm seeing if there's a next marker that needs to be spoken. Basically here. So if it's speaking this one and it speaks it, it'll move to the next one. So that's what it's doing here, is just pulling for the next unspoken marker. This is like forces the UI to update. This is probably some workaround thing. I will probably go back and re-optimize some of these types of things. But basically, what it does is when the app opens up, it really is only waiting for location updates, and sometimes the location update won't happen right away. So this is just a way, kind of a hack, kind of a workaround. I don't know what you want to call it, but it works, right? So as the app opens up, it modifies the location, user location here, and that will cause an update to occur, and load markers for the current location, etc., etc. Did faithful render. This is some more of the frame render performance tuning. And in here, let's see what we got in here. So this is the panel. So this shows the panel going up and down. It's for this thing here. This is what this is checking for. Okay, so there was a thing, there was a little bug in Material 2 that when you have your phone like this and you rotate it, it would leave the closed drawer not offset enough. So you would, as it changed the compass, the composable would be sitting partially on the screen. So this is a little fix for that. There's like so many. I ran into so many little things like this. And I know you usually do on these projects, but man, there was just more than normal because I'm working with alpha versions of stuff that people haven't even done much work on at all. So anyway, I fixed that part. It may be fixed in Material 3. I haven't checked yet, but that's part of it in my upgrade, in the upgrade path for the app. Let's see here. So here's where we're showing the error. Here's where we're showing the billing messages. Let me see what kind of stuff we have here. It's just, a text box. Big whoop. And here we have just another text box. Okay. Here's where the map is rendered here. It looks very complicated. There's this thing going on where I talked about before where you the should set it does the should here. Right? So the command sets to true on the UI from the core, from the UI, whatever, sets this flag to true. The next render cycle, the Google Maps sees it as this flag is set, does something internally, so it sets some internal state, and then says, "Oh yeah, I on did," which will then basically reset this variable back. Goofy as hell. Like, is this really the way it's set up? Is how we're supposed to do it? I mean, this works. It works great. It's really, it is scalable, sort of. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I should make this into an object at some point, but I don't know. We'll see. There's definitely a lot of parameters on this dang thing. So this jumps into the map content, which is like a wrapper around the each individual platform's Google Maps implementation. So then that goes into, here's it, so it splits off to the iOS and Android Google Maps implementation. So I did a little wrap around it for all these commands and all this crazy junk that you shouldn't be I don't think you should have to do it this way. There should be a different way of doing this. Okay, I'm just complaining. I can't kill. It's just been a real bear dealing with this, and there's just not a lot of help around it yet. Hopefully, this project will help you. You don't have the same pain that I went through. So here's the map content here, and then here's the markers. Again, it has the click callbacks to do all the things. Speaking markers and things like that. Oop, close that down. There's a Schauber. Okay, let's see. Did I cover all the things? Error message flow, Google Maps user. So yeah, let's see. Okay, yep. I may go into the frame rate performance optimizations at some future video, but I mean, you can look at the code and a lot of it is just hand tuned, just hacking it together. So I don't know. I might put that together. I don't know. But so the next one coming up is I'm gonna talk about how the speech stuff works. So it's a simple way to show. It's probably the easiest way before I show the billing of how to send a command from the core that goes into a flow that's received from whatever platform you're on, whether it's the iOS or Android, and then natively processed, and then that on the native side it emits a flow back that's then received. So yeah, that's the next video. I appreciate you guys listening.